All right, so what we want to do today is we have done some previous videos about stacking fit files into Siril. We have used the scripts to run the stacking program, and we ended up with a linear results.fit file. And now today I want to do some kind of preliminary editing on some images. And so we're going to just go through a few steps to kind of do some cursory editing. So the first thing we want to do is we want to open our file. So up here in the top left-hand um, box, corner of the screen, we're going to click Open. The one I've chosen to do today is one called NGC 6888. It's the Crescent Nebula. And we've already stacked this one, and so I have ended up with this result.fit file in my subs folder. And so I'm going to open that one. Well, we remember that when we open these, it's in a linear format, and all we have to do to see that is click on the auto stretch. We can click the high definition, and then we can click this little chain box over here, and then it shows us more what that picture's potential is. It's not there yet. This is just a cursory glance at what it could look like, but we want to do some post-processing on this one and kind of clean it up a little bit, because we can see this one has bands of red here, it has bands of red here, light pollution coming in here. This is a messy picture, and so we want to do just a few steps in Siril to kind of clean this up a little bit before we dive into some heavier duty post-processing. So the first thing I want to do is I want to do some plate solving. And what plate solving is it rotates this image so that it matches the files that are in Siril, so that it can match it up and do some processes for us more automatic, rather than us having to do everything manually. And so in order to do that, the image has to be in a certain direction so that it can find it in its database of files. And so to do this, what we're going to do is we are going to go up here, along here, the box next to scripts that says Tools, and click that box, and it opens this, and we're going to click on the astrometry right here, and then we're going to do Image Plate Solver. We're going to click that, and it opens up a box, and it's all pre-populated with stuff. And we don't know really what all that stuff is at this point because we're beginners. And so we're just going to leave what it's auto-populated in here, the defaults, and we're going to click OK. But when I click OK, I want you to watch the picture over on the left. So I click it, and then it comes up here, flipping image and updating as astrometry data. And we see that it flipped that into a different position. Now that red banding is down at the bottom. The light pollution and banding is up at the top. This is a pretty messy picture. And so we don't want to have to do all of our post-processing on all of this. If we were to post-process and focus on this area, we would get a different result than if we're focusing on this area. So we don't want all of this to kind of dilute our final image. And so let's go ahead and let's crop this image so that all we're doing is working on the area that is going to be viable for us to use. Now to do the cropping, all you do is put your cursor up in the corner. It doesn't matter which corner of your image, but kind of where you want to start. Click and hold the left button on your mouse and then drag a box around it. And then you can let go of the box and you can move your cursor around again. And if you're not happy with it, you can move it. You can see that it changes. You could move the whole thing. Just click it and drag that box around. When you've got it where you want it to be, just right click in that box and then click on the crop and then crop again. And you see that it cropped out all of that excess area of that image. And so now when we're working on this image, we don't have quite so much pollution and noise and things that we're trying to fix. If we tried to fix everything, you can overexpose and overcorrect things, and then it can really mix up your picture. So cropping it at this point is a good idea. If you can't crop it, you don't really have to. It just is helpful. Now, the next thing we want to do is let's remove some of this background stuff. There's a nebula here. There's a reddish colored nebula there. There's kind of a greenish nebula over here. So let's do some background extraction. And to do this, we're going to come up into image processing and then click on that. And then we're going to come down here to background extraction. And then it populates again. It generates the data that's in here. We're just going to leave that for now. As you're practicing with it after you've learned what we're going to do today and you're practicing on your own, practice changing some of these things, and that will help you learn what those numbers and functions do so that you can better understand post-processing. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as the default, and I'm going to click this generate button right here in the middle. Well, that we look at that and we think, oh no, what did I do to my picture? Well, this we're trying to tell Siril what part of the image we want it to consider removing the background for. And we don't want it removing some of these because it's right over our image of our object. And so to remove those, just hover over it with your cursor and then right click and it disappears. If you take away something that you meant that you didn't mean to, just right click and it will appear again. So you're going to left click and delete some of those. And sometimes my finger gets off a little and I end up adding one in. So all we're doing right here is removing all of these boxes that we want it to consider the background and remove some of that background distraction noise. And so we're going to take all of these out of here. It's going to take me a second. If there's somewhere that it's not considering removing background and you want it to, just add in one of those little red boxes wherever you want it to. See, I don't want it to take away any of my nebula. So I'm going to remove some of those that are maybe interfering. Maybe they're not. But like these ones, that one covers that star. This one covers part of the nebula. That one covers the nebula. And this one is kind of shaped like a kidney bean. And so there's some dimmer nebula right around here in the front that I want to remove because I don't want it to remove too much and then change the shape of the nebula. We want it to remain pretty much true to its form. And so I've removed a lot of that. Let's maybe remove that one. We could remove a couple over here that might interfere with those edges. Because I want the nebula still to be an authentic nebula. And so we don't want it to clean it up so drastically close to the edge that it no longer looks like a nebula. We can also remove things like there's this big bright star here. We probably want to keep that one included. So let's uncheck that one so it doesn't remove that. There's one there. There's a big star right in here. I don't want it to keep every single one of the stars once we do star removals, but there are some of them that we don't want it to remove. And so we're just going to, play around with it. It takes a couple minutes and you can look it over. You may want to do more or less than I've done here, but that's kind of how you do it. So right click to remove a box, left click to add one. And then once you've done that and you're pretty satisfied with what it's going to consider removing the background, you're going to hit compute the background. And then it's going to run a little thing over here, and then we'll click apply. And then it looks kind of the same. So we aren't sure exactly what it did if you're not watching really close. So if you're not sure and you want to know, there's an undo button right here. And if you click on it, it will take it back to what it was before. So that's what it was before, and that's what it is after. So you can see that it has done a little bit of a job here. It removed that red. It's not completely removed, but it certainly reduced it a lot. And so that's what that background extraction does. Well, now we want to do color correcting. Well, before when we did that plate solving and it flipped that object over to find it in its database so that it can apply some functions, the color correction is one of those things that plate solving um, orientation matters on. So what I want to do, the color correction, is it's going to look in a database and for objects, and it has identified this object based because we plate solved it and matched those stars up to the database. It now knows what object we're looking at. And so it looks in that database and it says, oh, well, this crescent nebula, it's not supposed to be green. It's supposed to be kind of a pinkish, orangish color. And so the color correction is going to do that for us because we did the plate solving and it looks at those colors. And so to do this, we're going to click on the image processing. We're going to go to the color calibration, and then the second one down is photometric color calibration. Click on that, and then it populates something in here, and that's populated based on the catalog, the photometric star catalog. And I don't know what all those mean. I'm sure that it's just an acronym, but it has looked at an online catalog to figure out what colors that this object should be, and it's populated it in there because we did that plate solving earlier on. And so we're just going to leave that the default. If you wanted to change it, you could, but that's something that you can, again, play around with once you're practicing on your own, and click OK. And it's going to take just a second. You can see the progress line right here. And so it's doing its thing, and then it came out photometric color calibration succeeded. And so we're going to do, okay, we're closing that. So now it has done its color correction here. And so again, let's click the back button, see if we can see much of a difference. And you see it's not a huge difference, but it has added a little bit more red into this object. If you're watching up here and down here, you can really see the difference a little bit more. It's not significant because it was imported with color fairly close to what it really should be. Now the next one, the last one that we're going to do today of one of these little processing um, um, applications is, let's do some noise reduction because we can see a lot of noise in this image, and that's going to happen with astrophotography when we're imaging with the Seestar. So let's use the noise reduction, but let's use the deconvolution method of reducing that noise. And it is kind of an automated process and it makes it pretty easy. So we go into image processing, and then we scroll down here to filters and click on that. And then when it opens this menu, deconvolution right here in the middle, and we click on that. And you see that there's a whole bunch of defaults here too. And so for now, as a beginner, leave it the defaults. When you're practicing at home on your own and you're feeling a little bit brave, play around with those numbers and figures and see what they do. That will help you learn how to use Siril a little bit more. But for the purposes of this video, beginning video, we're going to just use those defaults. And then we're just going to click apply down here in the right hand corner. And it's going to think about it a little bit. And you see that progress line right here. All right. See if I can move this out of the way so we can see when it's, and then it says Siril. I can't read those letters. FFT, wisdom updated successfully. So let's close that window. So now this has denoised that image a little bit. So where did we start with and what did we end up with? We did, 3 or 4 steps to just kind of clean it up, some basic cleanup on this object. And let's see where we started. We can click this undo. It basically undoes all those steps that we did, and then we can redo them so that we can see where we began and where we ended up. So let's go back about 3 or 4 steps, and let's see. We started here with all of this light pollution, this red banding that goes up through here, this red nebula along here, more red banding and light problems over here. And then let's go forward the steps. We cropped it, and then we did some background removal and color coordination and deconvolution. And so this is where we are now. So that's what that image is saved like now. However, we got to remember that this is in auto stretch here. And what's really the image, if we were to save it right now, it is saved in the linear mode, which is this mode. We haven't stretched the image yet. We've just used this auto stretch so that we can visualize it as we're doing some of these steps. But we really haven't done that auto stretching yet. And we're not going to do that in this video yet. We're just doing a few of those little steps to clean up the object. And then we will do further videos down the road. So if you leave it on the auto stretch, it kind of gives you an idea what your object is looking like once it was stretched. But we haven't done that, of course, yet. But now is a good time to save this image so that we don't lose the work that we've already done. If you're satisfied right now, we're not completely done post-processing this image, but we've made some steps and we don't want to lose that progress. And so let's save this image, and you want to save it as a different name because we want to always keep that result.fit file so we don't have to go into Siril and do that stacking again, because that can take a long time, especially if you're doing 2,000 exposures. It can take a long time. So we don't want to save over that stacked image. We want to keep the original file. So up here in the top right, there's a little arrow down right next to it. So we'll go ahead and click on that, and we're going to save the file, and let's change it. It's defaulting to the result because that's the file that we opened. But let's change this, and I just usually number them. So I'm going to name it result2.fit. And it's still in that same NGC 6888 subs folder. And then I'm just going to save it. It's going to come up and ask me some of the formats. I always keep those the defaults, and then click save. And now we've got 2 files in there. We have the result.fit. That was just the stacking in Siril. And now we have a result2.fit that has some post-processing started on it. And so now we have 2 options if we were to muck it up. Sometimes when we're doing post-processing, we can do things and it really makes things wonky, and it sometimes is hard to undo what you did and get back to where you were. And so it's always a good idea to save files along the way so that you always have a place you can go back to if you need to start over, so you don't have to go all the way to the beginning. Once you've done a few steps, save it again and save it as a different file name so that if you corrupt that file somehow, you still have the previous file that you could go to, so you're not hopefully having to start over at the beginning. I hope this introductory beginner processing in Siril has been helpful. We are just learning along with you, but we hope these videos are helpful. Please let us know if you want to see more of these kinds of videos. It's kind of hard on YouTube to figure out exactly what everybody wants to see. And so we will certainly create more as we are going through these processes ourselves. But as always, we're wishing everybody clear skies, and we're thankful for everybody that watches our videos. Thanks for watching.